Hey there, welcome into the Bracket Science College Basketball Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Jadic. I thank you for joining us today on this very special Friday. We have a loaded slate of college basketball tomorrow, which we're going to dive into. We had a big week of college basketball. We just saw Wisconsin lose last night to Nebraska. We're going to talk about that a little bit. If you're here, please give us a like, smash that like button, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate it. Smash the like and subscribe button. Give us a follow. Also, check out our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Our Instagram and Twitter is at Bracket Science with two S's. Our Facebook's Bracket Science, two words. We post everything on there. We're just starting a new thing that we wanted to discuss where we are posting daily rankings. We are officially a month away from March, so we are going to post rankings every day leading up to March. Share my screen with you real quick for those watching on YouTube. This is going to be our everyday thing. Here's our first rankings. As you see, we still have Purdue in the number one spot, and we did move Northwestern into number 30. So be sure to check those out. That's on our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So as soon as I figure out how to stop sharing this, there we go. Let's dive right into the episode today. We're going to start with some of the results. We updated our bracketology that is also posted on our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So go check those out. We will link those in the bio below. So be sure to check out our new bracketology. We're going to discuss that a little bit. It was released yesterday, so it was before that Nebraska game. So obviously things are going to change, but it's got a pretty good basis of who's going to be the 1 and 2 seeds, along with some of the bubble talk. So we're going to dive into that, and then we're going to preview obviously the massive games that we've got coming up this weekend. 4 top 10 matchups. 8 of the top 10 teams play other top 10 teams. It is absolutely incredible. So we're pumped for that. So we're going to discuss many of those games, some of our betting advice, and much more. Thanks again for joining us. Let's dive right into some of our results from the previous week. We're just going to go Monday through Thursday. There's a few games tonight, few games to note, such as Dayton takes on St. Bonaventure tonight. Butler plays Creighton, but nothing too special, nothing worth noting. So nothing to keep your eye on too much there. But let's start with Monday. Go back a couple days. The Battle of Texas. It was number 4 Houston visiting Texas in Austin, and this game did go to overtime. Texas ended up losing to Houston 76-72. Houston led by 8 at half. Texas fought back to get it into overtime. They showed some heart. Houston's just on another level in the Big 12, it seems. This did put them in first in the Big 12 now. LJ Cryer struggled for Houston. Jamal Shed went off for 25 points, 8 rebounds. He kind of single-handedly brought them back into the game. Texas actually had a couple possession lead, and Jamal Shed knocked down some huge threes to bring Houston back. So big win for Houston there on the road. Well, let's go through these quickly. Duke visited Virginia. Duke number 7. They won 77-67. They actually had struggled a lot at Virginia Tech as of recently. They really struggled to beat them. But Jeremy Roach, he came off the bench from that injury he suffered, and he led Duke with 16 points. It was just kind of a coasting win for Duke. Let's move on to Tuesday, where North Carolina, the number 3 team in the nation, visited Georgia Tech and got beat 74-73. An incredible game here. Hopefully you guys tuned into this one. Was kind of a trap game coming in. You saw the line was only like 7.5 or 8.5 points, depending on where you get your lines. It was just because of this being a trap game. Obviously, North Carolina plays Duke this week, so we're going to dive into that. But Nathan George for Georgia Tech hit a clutch game winner, left-handed, little off the backboard. It was an incredible shot. Then at the end, North Carolina got it to half court, called timeout. Hubert Davis drew up a great play, threw it into Armando Bacot, handed it off to RJ Davis, got him going downhill. Very questionable call, whether it was a foul or not. It was he kind of got bumped by the Georgia Tech defender, but depending on who you're rooting for, how you look at it, it was 50-50 call, but ended up did not call it. Georgia Tech holds off 74-73. Georgia Tech now beat Duke and UNC. Incredible, great start for Damon Stoudemire over there at Georgia Tech. He's got this program sort of back on track. They are sub 500, but they've got some quality wins. They also beat Mississippi State earlier in the year, so good job for Georgia Tech. Let's move on to the other top 5 team that fell on Tuesday. It was Tennessee, number 5 team in the country, losing at home to South Carolina 63-59. South Carolina's defense is one of the best defenses in the country if you have not gotten to watch them. Dalton Connect for Tennessee, he had another outstanding game. He had 31 points. He had more than half of their points, 31 of their 59. They got to find some offense from others to be a national championship contender, as would point out, being a top 5 team in the nation right now. Michi Johnson, who's South Carolina's leading scorer, he only had 3 points in this game, and South Carolina still won this game. And their best player only scoring 3 points kind of shows how good the South Carolina team can be. Talon Cooper led South Carolina. He had 18 points. BJ Mack added 16. South Carolina is now 18-3. They've moved themselves into a higher seed competition in March Madness. Probably up. We have them up to a 6th seed, which we'll talk about a little bit when we talk about our bracketology. But I was actually asked on Instagram whether they could be seen as the best team in the conference. I see the argument. They beat Tennessee at Tennessee. Yes, they beat Kentucky at home, but Kentucky just fell at home to Florida. We'll talk about in a little bit. They're currently sole possession of 2nd place in the SEC. Alabama's in 1st. Auburn, Kentucky, and Tennessee are all trailing right behind. They're close, but they have a case to being one of the best teams in the SEC. I see the argument for it. Their losses came, they got drilled at Alabama by 27, which is why I would still probably lean Alabama. I think Tennessee and Kentucky have the highest ceilings out of all these teams, but they do have that questionable loss at home against Georgia, which is a little bit weird. But their other loss was in the non-con against Clemson, which respectable win. We have Clemson ranked in our top 30 rankings, as you may have just saw. But South Carolina, they're off to a good start. Lamont Paris, he's doing great. They had a rough year last year in his first year. But he's definitely the front runner for SEC Coach of the Year. Maybe even the front runner for National Coach of the Year. He's got this Gamecock squad rolling. I see the argument for South Carolina. I'm still going to lean Tennessee and Kentucky just because of their ceiling, but South Carolina, good on them. Let's move on. Big East. Number 9 Marquette visited Villanova, and Marquette handed it to them early, but Villanova fought back. But Marquette ended up winning 85-80. Tyler Kolek went off in this game, just went off. 32 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists. Villanova now 11-10 on the year. Yikes. And there was a big story going around when they introduced Kyle Neptune at the beginning of the game. Villanova was actually booing Kyle Neptune. A lot of fans want him out of there, not living up to expectations. He's actually now with this loss 28-27 overall in his career, while being the head coach at Villanova. And let's not act like it was a tough job to come in. Yeah, Jay Wright retired right away, but he came in with a lot of talent. Yes, they had some injury problems last year. This team has a lot of talent. They should not be 11-10 this year. Justin Moore, Eric Dixon, TJ Bamba. They're a solid team. They have a lot of talent. We saw them beat North Carolina earlier in the year. This team is not in a good spot. Tyler Kolek actually in his press conference at the end of the game, he basically just told the reporters that he heard Villanova fans were booing Kyle Neptune, saw some stuff there that's just like, yeah, let's go at this team. Told his team to take advantage of it, and Tyler Kolek just went off. They got off to a huge start in this game. People are going to stop coming to these Villanova games. It's a proud basketball franchise. They're now 4-6 in the Big East, 3rd to last in the Big East. They're just ahead of Georgetown and DePaul, Georgetown's a little bit on the up, but DePaul just a joke of a program. Marquette, with this win, they do move into tied for 2nd with Creighton just behind UConn. Kind of how we saw things picturing out. Those are definitely the 3 best teams in the conference. Thought Villanova would be right there, but this Kyle Neptune thing is just not working out. Got a lot of talk on whether they are going to fire Neptune or not. I definitely think they should, but I don't think they will just because of his status there. I think they'll give him a year or two. And then if you keep going 500 with this talent and this program, you gotta be let go at some point. It's just not working out. But Marquette ends up hanging on to a win there. Let's move on to the Big Ten. Number 14, Illinois visited Ohio State and Columbus. And Illinois beat them 87-75. This was kind of a must-win game for Ohio State. Terrence Shannon, Marcus Domask, they both had 23 points in this game. They become a really dynamic duo. Ohio State's now 3-7 in the Big Ten, which is also 3rd to last, only ahead of Rutgers and Michigan. Rutgers is bad this year. Michigan is just a joke of a program as of right now. This might be the end of Chris Holtmann era for Ohio State. I think he's a good basketball coach. I think he knows what he's doing, but at Ohio State, you have all the NIL money in the world. You can't be losing, not making the tournament 2 years in a row, which is what they're trending towards. I think this was kind of just a must-win game. They needed to beat Illinois and then probably beat Purdue, who they host in a couple weeks here, to have a chance as an at-large bid. But 3-7, you're not going to get an at-large bid. But for Illinois, they moved to third in the conference, just behind Wisconsin and Purdue, who play each other on Sunday, which we're going to dive into, one of the 4 top 10 matchups we're going to talk about. But let's continue on some of these results first. Number 15, Texas Tech visited number 25, TCU. TCU won the game 85-78. This was a good basketball game to watch for those who tuned in. It was a back and forth. No team really got off to a big lead. The score is actually a wider margin than the game actually showed. Tennyson for TCU has just been incredible. He had 23 points. Houston now leads the Big 12 with this loss of Texas Tech, as we talked about. They're half a game ahead of Texas Tech and Iowa State. TCU's tied for 5th with Kansas, who they did beat Oklahoma State on Tuesday without Kevin McCullough, as expected. Oklahoma State is horrible this year. But TCU and Texas Tech, both squads in the Big 12 they're worth noting. TCU especially, I think they got a lot of talent. We're going to rank the Big 12 teams here in a little bit, so we'll dive into some of these middle of the pack Big 12 teams here. Speaking of middle of the pack Big 12 teams, number 23 Oklahoma took it to Kansas State, visited Kansas State and killed them 73-53. It was a blowout from the beginning. Kansas State was actually favored in this game, but it was just domination from the beginning to the end for Oklahoma. Both teams are now 4-4 in the Big 12, right at 500. Into the Mountain West, San Diego State visited Colorado State, and Colorado State picked up a much-needed win, 79-71. After that debacle against Wyoming, that video went viral where they were up 11 with like a minute left, and Wyoming came all the way back and beat them. It's a good rebound win for Colorado State. This kind of separates Utah State and New Mexico even further from the field, and Boise State even in the Mountain West with this San Diego State loss. So something to keep an eye on there. I think the heavy favorite will now be Utah State, as we're going to talk about New Mexico losing a game here in a little bit. A rivalry game out of the SEC was Mississippi State visiting Ole Miss, and Ole Miss won 86-82. Man, love him or hate him, Chris Beard is an outstanding basketball coach. He has this Ole Miss team just back on the map. Jalen Murray had 21 points, 11 assists for Ole Miss. Ole Miss is now 18-3, 5-3 in the SEC. Mississippi State falls to 3-5. Mississippi State was favored in this game going in. The disrespect to Ole Miss just keeps continuing. We saw they just beat Texas A&M at Texas A&M. That wasn't supposed to happen. Now they win another game where they're underdogs. This Ole Miss team is better than you think. I expect them to be in the tournament this year. Let's move on to Wednesday, where we had a crazy day. Let's just start talking about the number 1 team in the nation. It was UConn. They hosted Providence and beat them 74-65. Providence held in there. They did well. Dan Hurley does what Dan Hurley does. He just wins games. He may be the coach of the year. They won the national championship last year. Coming back a year later and maybe winning coach of the year, very impressive. I love what I'm seeing from Dan Hurley. Got another comment on one of our Instagram, and I responded with, Dan Hurley may be the most impressive basketball coach I've ever seen in my lifetime. The energy he brings is just something I've never seen. He's only been there a couple years, but the things he's doing already, it's just, he's making his name at the top as maybe one of the best, maybe the top 3 best coaches in college basketball. Incredible stuff there for Dan Hurley. Let's move on to an overtime game, which we always have been seeing now from Northwestern and Purdue. This game was at Purdue. Northwestern obviously beat them in overtime earlier in the year, but Purdue won this one 105-96, beat up on Northwestern in overtime. Northwestern just matches up well with Purdue. A lot of people liked Purdue minus the 13 in this game. I didn't, just because Northwestern just plays Purdue well. Just like we've seen Rutgers plays Purdue well. It doesn't mean Rutgers is a better team than Purdue, but it just so happens. But good for Purdue to hold off on this game. Northwestern did shoot the lights out. Kind of just shows they expand the floor with Boo Buie. They get Zach Edey out on the perimeter, and they knock down threes, which is why they play them so well. They were 58% from the field, 52% from 3. Ty Berry and Boo Buie both had 25 apiece. Ty Berry was 6 for 9 from three. Boo Buie was 7 for 11. So obviously they just shot the lights out. Story, of course, Zach Edey, though, on offense, 30 points, 15 rebounds. Just incredible stuff every single game for Zach Edey. Your back-to-back National Player of the Year is going to be. Braden Smith had 11 points, 16 assists, big improvement there. But a huge, huge factor for Purdue in this game was Lance Jones, 26 points, 5 of 7 from three. Not known, but he's a good offensive player, but not really known for his offense. And this was a key jump for Purdue. Mason Gillis also had 14 points coming off the bench, 8 of 8 from the free throw line. That was huge. One of the craziest box scores we have ever seen. The craziest stat of the box score was Purdue shot 46 free throws. Northwestern shot 8. Yikes. Chris Collins, Northwestern's coach, became a legend after this game. He got ejected with 1 second left, just strictly because of the free throw disparity. A lot of frustration there. Obviously got drilled in overtime. It was kind of cool to see he got ejected with 1 second left. Doesn't really mean anything. And then looked like he was fired up, kind of just jawing at Purdue. But actually what he was doing was he was trying to just go tell everyone good job and good game. He went over and shook hands with Matt Painter. Didn't want to leave disrespectfully with 1 second left. Obviously could have just waited to shake hands. It was kind of nice of him to go shake hands with Matt Painter, dap up Zach Edey, and then tell all the Purdue players good job. It was nice. But in his post conference, he did not hold back. He just said it was the craziest differential in free throw shooting he had ever seen. He asked some of the reporters if he thought it was, and honestly, looking at it, 46-8. This was the difference in the game. It 100% was. Northwestern outshot Purdue. Just I understand Zach Edey's 7-4, but 46-8. That is incredible. If I were a coach in Chris Collins' spot, I definitely would have been thrown out as well. That's ridiculous. And I understand Zach Edey's going to get on average over 10 free throws a game, but 46-8. The more concerning number is Northwestern's 8. Like, you can't tell me that they would not get to the free throw line more than that. But anyways, the story is Purdue beats Northwestern, gets its revenge. Let's move on to Florida visiting number 10 Kentucky. Florida traveled and beat them 94-91 in overtime, a much-needed win for Florida in their bubble hopes. This is their first Quad 1 win, and what a better place to get it at than Rupp Arena. At the end of the game, there was a big sequence that went down. Rob Dillingham missed a free throw. He made the front end of the 1-and-1, missed the back end, but so up 3, obviously, do you foul? Do you not foul? Walter Clayton Jr. came down. John Calipari is known on the wrong end of not fouling in that Memphis-Kansas game years ago when Mario Chalmers hit that 3 to send it to overtime, and Kansas ended up beating Memphis. Kind of happened again here. They didn't foul. Walter Clayton Jr. threw up a pump fake. Reed Shepherd jumped, hit a 3 at the end of regulation. And Florida ended up winning the game in overtime, so maybe should have fouled in that scenario. Walter Clayton Jr. led the game with 23 points. Tyrese Samuel had 22 points, 13 rebounds, while Zion Pullen was right there, 21 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists. This might be the win to get Florida in the big dance. We know how much talent they have. This team can score from everywhere. A win at Rupp Arena just goes a long way. For Kentucky, let's look at some of their stats. Reed Shepherd, just incredible still, even with that mistake at the end. 24 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists. Rob Dillingham did have 20. Yes, that missed free throw hurts, but he still did great off the bench. Bear in mind, Kentucky was without Justin Edwards and DJ Wagner, so they were a little shorthanded in this game. But Onienso ended up starting the game for Kentucky for the first time in his career. He had 13 points, 16 rebounds, and he had 8 blocks. He did pretty well. All right, here's what I'm going to say about Kentucky, though. They are not a national contender right now. They are not a team that can win the national championship. And I say this because let's go through the trends. Let's look at some of the previous national championships. Last year, UConn was 7th in the nation in defensive efficiency. 7th in the nation in defensive efficiency at KenPom. 2 years ago, Kansas was 17th in defensive efficiency. 2021, Baylor was 22nd, and we're going to discuss this Baylor team here in a second. There was no tournament in 2020 because of COVID. In 2019, Virginia was 5th in defensive efficiency. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these, but since this stat has been measured, which was the start of the 1999 season, Baylor in that 2021 season was was the team with the worst defensive efficiency to ever win a national championship at the end of the year. And that was, we'll remind you, 22nd. The next worst was UConn in 2009 at 18th in defensive efficiency. So where does Kentucky stand right now? Kentucky is 75th in defensive efficiency right now. Not even close. Not even close to this top 22 number. It was notable in this game against Florida. They do not play any defense. Their offense has a lot of firepower, but if you can't defend, it shows. 22nd or better. You can't win national championships. Let's look at their resume a little bit as well. Let's look at their notable wins. North Carolina on a neutral. That's it. That's their only really notable win. They beat Miami earlier in the year at home. That Miami was a top 10 team at this point, but this has aged incredibly poorly. Miami may not even be a tournament team anymore. In fact, we have them on the outside looking in. They're currently tied for 5th in the SEC, which we talked about. They're 5th in the SEC and number 10 in the nation. Doesn't really add up. They don't have a resume that would probably put them above maybe a 4 or 5 seed right now. We'll talk about them, what went into our thought process where we rank them in our bracketology. But this team is not a national championship contender right now unless they figure something out on the defensive end. And from what I'm seeing, they're not getting better on the defensive end. They're getting worse. Florida can score the basketball. It's understandable, but there's no defense being played. Aaron Bradshaw and Ivisic, they barely played in this game. They need them down low. They need that size. Yes, Anienso had 8 blocks, but this team does not play defense whatsoever. Do not bet on Kentucky to win the national championship right now. That is what I'm going to say to all my Kentucky fans out there. All right, let's move on. Let's move around the nation a little bit more. Baylor, number 18 team in the nation, rallied to beat UCF 77-69. They did trail at the half. Boise State went into the pit at New Mexico and did what no other team has been able to do, and they beat New Mexico 86-78. New Mexico's first loss at home this year. Number 24, Alabama recovered from a 14-point halftime deficit to beat Georgia 85-76. Yes, I'm sorry for those who had Georgia plus 6.5 in that one. Alabama made their case as the team to beat in the SEC right now. They are sole possession of first. They're looking good. Their lone loss has been at Tennessee. So we'll see how they do going forward. St. John's went into Xavier and got beat 88-77. St. John's moving more and more down towards the bubble. We have them as a first 4 team right now. They got to start picking up some wins. I know they got a big chance against UConn at home this weekend. Cincinnati lost at West Virginia 69-65. Cincinnati keeps losing. They're 3-5 in the Big 12. These are games you need to win at West Virginia, UCF, and Oklahoma State. But they have a chance to make the tournament. We'll see if they can get hot at the right time. I think they got to go at least probably 8-10, maybe 7-11 can sneak in to make the tournament. But we'll see. Another team that may not make the tournament, you would never believe, is Memphis. Memphis has lost 4 in a row now. Rice, they lost to Rice at Memphis. Rice came into Memphis 7-13 on the year and beat a team who was technically in the top 10 of the AP poll just a couple weeks ago. They ended up winning 77-74. Memphis now 4-4 in the conference. They are struggling mightily. They got off to that great start, as we said, got into the top 10, and now we also have them as a first 4 team as of now. So we'll see if they don't recover. I mean, this is a quad 4 loss against Rice. Good win for Rice. Tough loss for Memphis. All right, let's talk about Thursday. Thursday, only one game to really note. Number 6, Wisconsin went into Nebraska at Pinnacle Bank and got beat 80-72 in overtime. So you might think it was Nebraska kind of hanging in there the whole way. This was not the case. Wisconsin led the entirety of the game, especially in the first half. This is the win for Nebraska that looks like it might get them in the tournament. Yes, I know they beat Purdue earlier, but now to beat 2 top 10 teams, like they're there. They trailed by 16 in the first half at halftime. CJ Wilcher ended up just taking off. 22 points, 7-10 shooting. Ranked Mast hit some huge threes at the end. He had 20 points. Bryce Williams had 17 and 9. AJ Storr for Wisconsin, he had 28 points. was a little bit of a trap game because Wisconsin does play Purdue, so we were kind of curious to see. I had Nebraska in this game. I was curious to see how Wisconsin would do on the road at a very tough Pinnacle Bank, with preparing for Purdue on Sunday, and they looked great. They got off to a huge start. They were up 31-19 like right away. Then Nebraska just fought all the way back. So good for Nebraska in this one. This is the win that might do it. They might seal the deal to get you in the tournament, as long as you don't do anything stupid like lose to Michigan or Rutgers or something like that. Even Ohio State in that conversation now. That's all the results we're going to talk about. Next, we're going to jump into our bracketology. Bracketology just came out on Thursday, yesterday. So go check it out on our Instagram and Twitter and our Facebook. It's also posted on our blog, bracketscience.weebly.com. It's a good place to check out. We post everything there first. So let's just dive in a little bit. Obviously, things changed with that Nebraska win last night, but our 1 seeds will stay the same. It is the first overall seed is Purdue, and then Houston is our second number 1 seed. Third number 1 seed is UConn, and our fourth is North Carolina, even with that loss against Georgia Tech. We had our first 2 seed being Wisconsin. We'll see how their resume now compares. Haven't looked at it yet, but we had Wisconsin, Arizona, Tennessee, and Kansas as 2 seeds, with Marquette, Duke, Alabama, and Iowa State as 3 seeds. So those are some of the top seeds. Let's talk about some of the bubble talk. Our last 4 byes, we have Oregon, Providence, Texas, and Florida. Florida moving into the tournament with that win over Kentucky. We did move them in. They are actually our last bye. We have them as an 11 seed right now. The first 4 games, we already talked about St. John's and Memphis. We also have Mississippi State and Texas A&M. Texas A&M's record doesn't show it, but they do still have the most quad 1 wins in the SEC. So it's good enough to get them a first 4, but they've lost some questionable games. Our first team out, unfortunately, is Hunter Sallis and Wake Forest. Wake Forest, our first team out. Our next team out is Cincinnati. Then Gonzaga. Gonzaga kind of creeping back up there. They got a big game against St. Mary's this week. And then Villanova is out of the tournament. 11-10. You think it's crazy that they're even in here, but they have some of the best wins, and they have the best wins out of anyone on the bubble. But 11-10, just at some point that catches up to you. Next 4 out, we have Seton Hall. Seton Hall, unfortunately, has dropped a few. We had Nebraska, but Nebraska is going to move into our tournament. I can tell you that they are going to get a bye as well. They're not going to be a first 4 team. They now have 2 huge wins. This will move them in. Washington State kind of steadily up there. Kind of a bold prediction, though. I do think the Pac-12 is just going to kind of eat themselves up. So some of these quad 1 and 2 wins might even drop a little bit for Washington State. So this might be a little bit of a struggle for them. Then our final team is Syracuse in our next 4 out. That's our bracketology. Be sure to go check out the full list with we have all the mid-major teams, all the projected conference winners, our automatic qualifiers, on our Instagram and Twitter at Bracket Science 2 S's, and on our Facebook, Bracket Science 2 Words, along with our blog, bracketscience.weebly.com. Go check that out. We post everything on there. All right, now it's time to talk about our weekend slate. Absolutely loaded slate. We have 4 top 10 matchups, as we said. We're going to talk about all of those, but we do for those who are new here, we do a Sweet 16 where we talk about 16 of the biggest games. We pick our picks, and we talk. We're going to talk more about the top 10 matchups, obviously, but then we'll get into some of the other ones. Let's start with these top 10 matchups on Saturday, and then we'll talk about some of the other ones. Just go with a triple header on ESPN, 4:30, 6:30, 8:30. Start at 4:30. Number 4 Houston visits number 8 Kansas. Houston favored by 5 via KenPom. We do not have the FanDuel lines yet. As we said, Houston is 6-2 in the Big 12. Kansas only 1 game back, 5-3, a chance to kind of level the playing field here. Houston's a better basketball team. If I'm seeing it from my eyes and from the stats and all the computer metrics, they're a better basketball team than Kansas is this year. Keep an eye out on if Kevin McCullough is going to play. He did not play against Oklahoma State the other day, but that's Oklahoma State. They were going to win that game regardless. Against Houston, I fully expect him to be back. And if he is back, Kansas, home underdog, +5, 100%. I would definitely ride the Jayhawks. Saw them beat UConn, who is the number 1 team in the nation, at home, strictly because it was at home. They were to play UConn on a neutral site. I think UConn beats up on Kansas. But they're so good at Allen Fieldhouse. Kansas actually 12-0 at home this year. This is their first time being a home underdog since that 21 Baylor team that we talked about that ended up winning the national championship. Only lost 2 games all year. So Kansas +5, I think I'll take them. I think Houston has a good chance of pulling this game out, but I think Kansas +5 is the best bet for this one. All right, the biggest rivalry in college basketball at 6:30. Number 7 Duke visits North Carolina. North Carolina favored by 5 via KenPom. And what a great Duke North Carolina matchup we have. Both teams in the top 10, the top 2 teams in the ACC. Incredible. So glad to see both programs back on track. Carolina's 9-0 at home. As we said, they just suffered that loss to Georgia Tech. Might be a little fired up here. Some great guard matchups, some great big matchups. RJ Davis versus Jeremy Roach, Armando Bacot versus Kyle Filipowski. Huge matchup. Bacot's kind of been in cruise control as of late, but I think Kyle Filipowski is probably, I think RJ Davis, the front runner for ACC Player of the Year, then probably Filipowski. I think Bacot will take this personally a little bit. He kind of only shows up for the big moments. I think he will play well in this one. I'm taking North Carolina. I think the line's going to be more like 3.5, 4.5. I'm taking North Carolina in this one. I think they pull it off. The final game of the triple header out of the SEC, number 5 Tennessee visits number 10 Kentucky. Tennessee favored by 2 via KenPom. Interesting, in these 2 of these 3 top 10 matchups, the away team actually favored via KenPom. I still believe these are the 2 best teams in the SEC. Yet Tennessee's 4th, Kentucky is 5th. Both teams need a win bad if they want a chance at an SEC title. Alabama obviously in first. It's kind of a must-win game for both teams if they want a regular season title. I have no clue who is going to win this game. I personally would not bet on this game if I was anyone. I think it is a very 50-50 matchup. I'd probably take Kentucky just because it's at home if I had to pick, but I'm not really that bought in on Kentucky right now. I was bought in on Tennessee until Dalton Connect scored 31 of their 59 points, especially going on the road to a tough Rupp Arena. Probably lean Kentucky, but I would stay away from this game. I think Tennessee's the better basketball team. I think Kentucky has more talent. I think it's at Kentucky. It's an interesting game. It should be a fun watch. Has the highest thrill score on Saturday at KenPom. So go check that out. That's at 8:30. All right, let's move. Those are the 3 main events. You want to catch all those. We'll talk about the other top 10 game, but that one's on Sunday, so that'll be our last one we talk about. But let's stay in the Big 12. We have another ranked on ranked matchup. Number 12 Iowa State visits number 18 Baylor. Baylor favored by 3 via KenPom. This game is on ESPN2. This game is at 8:00. This should be a fun one. Baylor coming off that win against UCF. They did lose to TCU at home a couple days ago. Interesting line, -3, depending on how you like it. The Big 12, this middle of the pack is very tough. Let's we promised we'd rank them. Let's just rank them here. I think it is definitely number 1 Houston. Number 2, I still lean Kansas. I don't think Kansas is that good this year, but I still think they're the second best team in the conference. Well, let's just mention that the Big 12 maybe it's deep. It's as deep as it's ever been, but I think the teams may even be a little bit overrated. Like I think Kansas is a little bit overrated. I think Iowa State is good, but they are good at home. They aren't that great of a team on the road. I'm in on TCU. I think TCU is good. I think Baylor is one of the most overrated teams in the country, but like I really only see one national championship contender in here, and it's Houston. And they'd probably be my 4th pick to win it all as of right now. I think this conference is a little bit overrated, but all right, let's go to ranking them. Houston 1, Kansas 2. I think Iowa State, I would lean 3 just because of that home court advantage. Got TCU at 4. I think I'm impressed with what I've seen with TCU. Baylor 5, Baylor and Texas Tech and BYU all kind of just the same. I got Texas Tech and then BYU right behind them. Oklahoma right behind them. Then Texas, Kansas State, Cincinnati, UCF, West Virginia, then Oklahoma State. UCF, West Virginia, and Oklahoma State. Definitely the 3 worst. Texas, Kansas State, and Cincinnati all kind of blend together. It's an interesting conference. I only see one national champion competitor from them, and it's Houston. I don't see any way that Kansas can win it this year. If I had to pick another one, it'd probably be TCU. I think TCU's got that star power that with the addition of Tennessee and Emmanuel Miller, they've got some talent there. Baylor should they're more talented than they've shown. Jacoby Walter is going to be a lottery pick. Got in Ray J. Dennis from Toledo. I was in on Ray J. Dennis because I'm only a couple hours from Toledo. I've seen him play a few times, but he's a good basketball player. They just don't play well together. It's very one-on-one basketball. Not in on Baylor. I don't think they're that good this year. I think they lack a big man too. Eves Missy he's good, but he's a freshman. He's not a star yet. That's my rankings on the Big 12. Let's move on. Let's move to the Big East, where the number one team in the nation, UConn, visits St. John's. This game is on Fox at noon. UConn favored by 4 via KenPom. I think this might be a Rick Pitino game here. I think Rick Pitino might pull it off against the number one team in the nation. +4 for sure. I would definitely take St. John's in this one. At 2 o'clock, Texas visits number 25 TCU. Another battle for Texas. TCU favored by 3 via KenPom. This game's on ESPN2. As I said, I am in on TCU. I'm not so in on Texas right now. Give me TCU minus the 3 in this one. At 3:30, number 17 Utah State, leading the Mountain West, visits San Diego State, who is favored by 4 via KenPom. This game is on Fox. Wow, great matchup here. I think, this is an interesting line. I do think Utah State wins the conference. This is kind of Utah State's last road test. We talked about that in our futures bets, in our last show, where Utah State does have one of the easier schedules going forward for the Mountain West. This was the game we talked about where it's kind of it's their biggest one at San Diego State. I think I'll take San Diego State at home, coming off that loss to who they did, Colorado State, coming off that loss to Colorado State. -4 though. It's iffy. I'd probably lean San Diego State. Tough line here. We'll see how that one goes. Very excited to watch that. Luckily, it's on Fox and not the Mountain West Network. At 6 o'clock in the SEC, number 16 Auburn visits Ole Miss. This game's on the SEC Network. Auburn favored by 6 via KenPom. Told you, Ole Miss continues to be underappreciated. I'm taking Ole Miss plus the 6. Can see Auburn winning this game, but I think Ole Miss covers. I could even see Ole Miss winning this game. Every time Ole Miss seems to be an underdog, they end up winning. I'm taking Ole Miss in this one. Also at 6 o'clock, a Big 12 matchup. Cincinnati visits number 15 Texas Tech on ESPN Plus. Get that subscription. Texas Tech is favored by 4. I would take Texas Tech minus the 4 in this one. Cincinnati's kind of been stumbling as of late. We'll see. At 1 o'clock, South Carolina visits Georgia on the SEC Network. These are some of the unranked matchups we're going to talk about now. South Carolina will be ranked on Monday, I think, even if they lose this game to Georgia. But Georgia is favored by 1 via KenPom. I think I'm leaning more South Carolina in this one. We've seen how Lamont Paris has done. He just won at Tennessee. I think they're going to keep rolling. They might be a little bit of a Tennessee hangover in this one. I think Georgia's okay. They're better. I like what Mike White does over there, but I'd lean South Carolina. South Carolina is the better team in this matchup, being at Georgia. Might be interesting. We'll see. But I would probably lean South Carolina in that one. At 2 o'clock on ESPN, this will preview the top 10 matchups that we talked about. Virginia visits Clemson. It is an unranked matchup, but it is 2 very good ACC schools. Clemson is favored by 6 via KenPom. I would take Clemson to cover the 6. Virginia is not a very good road team, but Virginia has been rolling as of late. Believe it or not, Virginia got off to that very shaky start. Not shaky start. They got off to a decent start, but kind of hit a roadblock in the middle of the season. They were cold for a while. Virginia they're up to 3rd in the ACC. They're 7-3 in the ACC. They could jump if they win this game and Duke loses at North Carolina. Virginia is in 2nd in the ACC. I did not see that one coming with some of their offensive struggles, but you know Tony Bennett, that's what he does. But Clemson has been playing better as of late. They probably should have beat Duke, but I would take Clemson to cover the 6 in this game because I think they got enough experience to handle Virginia's slow play. At 4 o'clock, a big SEC matchup. Florida visits Texas A&M on ESPN2. Texas A&M favored by 2. I would lean Florida in this one. Florida just picked up that big win, and I think they just needed one of them to get over the hump. I think they pick up another quad 1 win here. I think they beat Texas A&M. Wade Taylor just continues to either shoot his team in games or shoot his team out of games. So Texas A&M games are very hard to bet on, but I would probably lean Florida in this one, even on the road. At 5:30, Maryland visits Michigan State on Fox. Michigan State favored by 8. This is a rematch of that game that was an incredible matchup earlier in the year. Michigan State ended up beating Maryland at Maryland by 2. Tom Izzo just picked up his 700th win the other day against Michigan, so shout out to him. Haven't mentioned that on here yet. Good for Tom Izzo. Love that guy. But I think Maryland covers 8 in this game because of how close it was. Jameer Young has been on an absolute tear. Maryland's actually been playing better. Michigan State has also been playing better, but I think I'd lean Maryland to cover 8 in this game. Now let's talk about two big mid-major games that we're going to see on Saturday. Drake visits Indiana State. Indiana State favored by 5. This game's on ESPN2. Drake beat Indiana State earlier in the year. I think Indiana State wins this game kind of easily. I think Indiana State is the better team. 5 is kind of a lot, but I would lean them covering 5. Kind of a revenge game. Drake, seen them struggle on the road. I saw them get beat by 1 million at Belmont. I would take Indiana State to cover in this game. At 10:30, out of the WCC, St. Mary's at Gonzaga. This game is on ESPN. It follows that Kentucky-Tennessee game. Gonzaga favored by 5 on KenPom. I'm taking St. Mary's. I'm taking St. Mary's to not only cover, I'm taking St. Mary's to win in this game. St. Mary's has been absolutely rolling. Gonzaga, every time you see them at home, you're like, yeah, it's a great environment. They should be really good. But the thing is, this team is just not that good this year. Unfortunately, they don't have a lot of talent. I watched that game against San Francisco where it was one of those where it's like, Gonzaga needs this. Like you can't even let San Francisco have a chance to win this game. Gonzaga was favored by quite a bit as they should have won the game easily. And San Francisco was beating them for a while. San Francisco held in there. I'm no disrespect to San Francisco, but it's a game Gonzaga should have handled easily. They're just not that good this year. And I think St. Mary's is good and they're rolling. They're actually our first team out of our new rankings. I would take I think I'm going to take St. Mary's to not only cover 5 but win this game. I think St. Mary's kind of turns the ship as they're the best team in the WCC this year. Our final game we're going to talk about, number 2 Purdue visits number 6 Wisconsin on Sunday on CBS. Purdue is favored by 1 in this game via KenPom. Purdue is actually in the lead in the Big Ten right now. It's been Wisconsin most of the way, but Purdue with that win over Northwestern and Wisconsin falling to Nebraska. Purdue is 9-2. Wisconsin is 8-2. It's not necessarily a must win for Purdue as of right now, as it may seem to win the conference, because Wisconsin does travel to Purdue late in the year. This will be a really fun matchup. Wisconsin kind of expands the floor real well. They have great spacing, brings Zach Edey out on the perimeter. See how well that does, but I think they might struggle guarding Zach Edey. I think I'm taking Purdue to win this game. I think their size and their athleticism just outmatches Wisconsin. Should be a fun one. Our 4th top 10 matchup of the weekend. What a weekend. Tune in on all of these incredible networks. That's it for our show today. Thanks, everyone. Hopefully everyone enjoyed some of the preview. I know you're going to enjoy some of the games on Saturday and Sunday. Just an incredible slate. I expect everyone to be surprised with some of these outcomes. Crazy things are going to happen. We've been seeing it week in and week out. As always, give us a follow on our Instagram and Twitter. I know we keep saying it. We're trying to continue to grow our Instagram and Twitter at Bracket Science, 2 S's, on Facebook, Bracket Science, 2 words. Leave a review, leave a 5-star, 4-star review, whatever you think. We love to hear. We leave some comments. We love to interact. We try and interact with everyone who comments on every social media account. We respond to every single one of you. We love having conversations. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. We love how passionate some of these fans are about their teams. Love questions about bracketology. We're actually looking for a new co-host, so love to have some interaction between 2 people on this podcast going forward. So DMs are always open. We'd love to see people reaching out, and as always, check out our blog as well, bracketscience.weebly.com. We post everything on there. We post our podcasts on there, post our bracketology first, some of our rankings, some of our best bets, whatever you need. It's all on bracketscience.weebly.com. And that is going to be it. As always, give us a like, subscribe, follow, review, comment, do what you can. We appreciate it. Everyone have a great weekend. Enjoy these basketball games. See you later.